Today we'll be discussing about the structure of the human heart. The heart is a hollow muscular organ. It is present in the middle of our chest. It's present between two lungs and behind the sternum, that is the breastbone, and slightly towards the left of the breastbone, right? So we'll try to draw the different compartments of the heart. We'll try to first draw the lower medial compartments of the heart, right? So this heart has two sides. So whenever we are drawing the anatomical structure or reading the anatomical structure, you have to visualize it in a way that you are reading the structure of someone else, that you are studying the anatomy of some other person who is standing in front of you. So as of now, you are studying about the heart of mine, right? So my heart is on this side, left side. So this will be now the left side. I'll write it so that we don't mix up the things. And this is the right side, right? So this is the anatomical left side. This is the anatomical right side, right? So this is the bottom major chamber of the heart, and I will draw the other chamber on the other side. Yes. So this is the ventricle. This is the left ventricle, and this is now the right ventricle, right? And we also know that the ventricle has a thick muscular wall, and the left ventricle has thicker muscular wall as compared to the right ventricle. So I'll try to draw the muscular wall. This is the muscular wall, right? And on the left side, the ventricle has thicker muscular wall. This is the muscular wall, right? So why is the left ventricle having a thicker muscular wall? It's because the ventricle, left part of the ventricle has to contract and send the blood to all the cells and the tissues in our body. So it has to generate a more pumping pressure, which is provided by the muscles of this heart, right? On the other hand, the right ventricle, it has to squeeze, it has to contract and send the blood only to the lungs, which are closer. So the lungs are closer to the heart. So they need not to generate significant pumping pressure. That's why it has a thinner muscular wall, right? Now, from the left ventricle will emerge a major blood vessel, and that blood vessel has a valve here, and this valve is pointing upwards. This is a valve here, and from ventricle will start a major blood vessel, this blood vessel, right? So this blood vessel is the blood vessel which will carry the blood out of the heart. This is called as aorta. This is the largest artery in our body, right? It will take the blood from the left ventricle, and this is the oxygenated blood, right? And it will take this blood to all the cells and the tissues in our body, right? Now, in this ventricle, left ventricle, we have one more valve, right? This valve was pointing upwards like this. This is a valve here. Now this valve here, it is pointing downwards, just like this, right? So this valve prevents the backflow of the blood from the left ventricle back into the chamber here, which is the left atrium, right? So this valve here is called, this valve is just like two flaps. It has two cusps, two leaflets, right? That's why we call it a bicuspid valve. The proper name of it is the mitral valve. So we call it bicuspid valve or the bicuspid mitral valve, right? And similarly, we have a blood vessel which is emerging from the right ventricle. It also has a valve just like this. It also has a valve which points upwards like this, right? And this blood vessel will carry the blood out of the right ventricle and will send this blood to the lungs, right? So once it emerges out of the heart, it immediately divides into two here, right? It will divide into two here. So these two blood vessels, they will carry the blood. We have two lobes of the lung. So one lobe will carry the blood to one lobe, and the other vessel will carry the blood to the other lobe, right? So this blood vessel, because it goes to the lungs, that's why it's called a pulmonary. Right here, it is a pulmonary, right? And whether we have to call it an artery or a vein, so in anatomy or in biology, see, If a blood vessel is carrying the blood away from the heart towards the rest of the body parts, away from the heart, we call it an artery, right? So an artery is a blood vessel which carries the blood away from the heart. On the other hand, the vein is a blood vessel which carries the blood towards the heart. Right? So this blood vessel, because it carries the blood from the right ventricle to the lungs, is called as pulmonary artery. Right? And then, just like we had valve here, we have a valve here, it points downwards similarly. Now this valve between the right atrium and the right ventricle, it has three cusps. It had two cusps, now it has three cusps, three flaps, right? That's why we call this valve as the tricuspid valve. And this tricuspid valve, it prevents the flow of the blood from the right ventricle back into the atrium. Now we have drawn the major chambers of the heart. These are the major chambers of the heart, right? And then we'll draw the other two chambers of the heart. So we have one chamber here, right? Now this chamber, first we have to draw the blood vessels which carry the blood in this chamber, right? So this chamber gets the blood from 4 blood vessels, right? I'll draw 2 here. This is one blood vessel, and this is the other blood vessel. I told you there are 4 such blood vessels, but I have drawn just 2. I'll draw the other 2 as openings here in the atrium. So this chamber that we have formed now, this chamber is now the left atrium. And this left atrium will get the oxygenated blood from the lungs. So you have lungs here, right? And the lungs, what is the function of lungs? The lungs have the function of oxygenation. The lungs add the oxygen to the blood, right? Once they add the oxygen to the blood, then they send that oxygenated blood into the left atrium, right? So that means the blood will come like this. And these blood vessels, now because they get the blood from the lungs, we call them pulmonary. And now because they get the blood into the heart or towards the heart, we call them pulmonary veins. Right? These are the pulmonary veins now, which get the blood from the lungs into the left atrium. Okay. Now similarly we have one more top chamber here, right? And this top chamber, it basically gets the blood from the rest of the body, from the systemic circuit. We have all the cells, so this aorta will get the blood out of the left ventricle, and this blood vessel will first divide into the arteries and the arterioles, and then finally into the capillaries. Then the capillaries will distribute the oxygen to the body cells and the tissues, and then in this process the carbon dioxide is generated by the cells. That carbon dioxide will be added to the blood, and that blood will now return from the cells and the tissues, and that blood will be collected in the major blood vessels here, right? We have a major blood vessel here which drains into the right atrium now, right? So this major blood vessel, this is basically formed by the fusion of 2 blood vessels, right? One on top side and one which gets the blood from the lower side of the body, right? So this blood vessel is called as vena cava. This blood vessel, right? Now because this blood vessel is formed by 2 branches, by the fusion of 2 branches, this one and this one. So this lower branch is called as inferior vena cava, and this one is called as the superior vena cava. This upper branch, superior vena cava, it gets the blood from the head, from the neck, from the chest, and from the arms, right? On the other hand, this lower blood vessel, this inferior vena cava, it gets the blood from your legs, from your feet, from the organs in your abdomen, from the pelvic organs, etc. So together they drain the blood into the right atrium. Now this is the right atrium, and I will now draw the wall of the right atrium. So this is the wall of the right atrium now. Similarly, this is the wall of the left atrium. Now, this is the structure of the heart along with the major chambers and the major blood vessels, right? Now we'll try to study the blood flow, okay? Now this valve here, this valve and this valve, which prevents the flow of the blood from these major blood vessels back into the ventricles. These valves, they look like half of the moon, right? They look half of the moon, a crescent, half of the moon. That's why we call these valves as semi-lunar valves. So this is a semi-lunar valve. And because it is present between the left ventricle and the aorta, we sometimes call this aortic semi-lunar valve. Similarly, this is also a semi-lunar valve, but because it's present in the pulmonary artery, we call it pulmonary semi-lunar valve. Okay, now let's try to study the flow of the blood into the heart, right? First, I told you that the blood will become oxygenated in the lungs, right? And then this oxygenated blood will return from the lungs via pulmonary veins and will, so by convention in biology we draw oxygenated blood in the red color, right? So both of these bloods are red, even this venous blood is also red, but just for the sake of convenience we draw it in the red color. Otherwise this is red, this is also red. Now this oxygenated blood which is coming from the lungs will enter this atrium. Now you have to remember, whether it is the left atrium or the right atrium, they are nothing but the tanks. They act as the reservoirs, right? So they store the blood for some time. The blood which is coming either from the lungs or from the systemic circuit. So these atria, they will store this blood for some time. Now this valve is open, right? So this blood will now enter the ventricle and fill the ventricle, right? So a part of this blood will directly come from the pulmonary veins into the atrium and then flow into the ventricle, right? And then when this atrium will contract, now most of the blood in this atrium will come and drain down through this bicuspid valve and will get accumulated inside the ventricle, right? Now when the ventricle will get filled by the blood, this ventricle will contract, right? When the ventricle will contract, now this valve, it will shut off, right? It will be closed. This valve will be closed. Now when the ventricle is contracting, now this valve gets closed and this valve will open now. Now this oxygenated blood will enter the aorta through the semi-lunar valve, and then this oxygenated blood is delivered to rest of the body tissues, right? And draw the cells here. They are all the cells from the head to the toe. All the cells in our body need this blood, need the oxygen, so it will be delivered to it, right? Now the body tissues and the cells, they will now generate the carbon dioxide. They will put this carbon dioxide into this blood. Now this venous blood will return from the body, right? The lower part of the blood will come through the inferior vena cava, and the blood from the upper part will come through the superior vena cava. The lower part of the blood will return from the inferior vena cava, and the upper blood will return from the superior vena cava, and this blood will enter the right atrium. From the right atrium, similarly, the blood will go and fill the right ventricle, and then when the right ventricle will contract, this valve will close here and this valve will open. Now this blood will move out of this and will reach the lungs, where it will become oxygenated, and that oxygenated blood will again return to the left side of the heart. So this is one complete cycle of the heart, right? Now we have studied about the valves, the major blood vessels and the major chambers. Now there are some other important things that we have to remember, right? So these valves, we want these valves to open only to a certain degree. We don't want them to overexpand. For example, when the ventricle is contracting, there may be a chance that this valve, this blood pressure will push these valves up into the atrium, right? Just like this, up into the atrium. But there are special structures for that. We have special structures, we call them tendons. We have cords of tendons here, right? So these are the tendons here, right? So these tendons or the cords of the tendons, we sometimes call them by the Latin name. We call them cordi tendini. Or simply as the tendons, right? Now these tendons, they are held by special type of muscles, right? These muscles, What do they do? What is their function? They root these tendons in the wall of the heart, right? So these tendons are held together by these papillary muscles, and these papillary muscles are rooted inside the heart, right? So these muscles are now called papillary muscles. Right? So they help these tendons of the cardiac tendon to secure the valve so that it does not overexpand, right? Similarly on this side we have these cords and we have the capillary muscles, right? Now we have some different layers of the heart, Let's study these layers one by one. First we have the layer which is present on the outside of the heart, here. It is a fibrous layer, right? And this fibrous layer has the function of providing the physical protection to the heart. I will draw this layer only on one side of the heart. It is present on the entire surface of the heart. Now, this is a fibrous tissue, a fibrous layer, and it forms a sac-like structure which holds the heart in this sac, right? Now, that's why we call it the peri. So, in anatomy, peri is the peripheral or the perimeter, something which is outside, right? So, this is called as pericardium. Or sometimes we call it pericardial sac also, because it looks like a sac. Now, its function is to provide the physical protection to the heart, apart from the ribs, the sternum and the vertebra. So, this is also the means of the physical protection to the heart, right? Now, so apart from the physical protection, it also prevents the overexpansion of the heart. So, the heart can expand only up to a certain degree. It cannot expand beyond that particular proportion, right? Now, this is a fibrous tissue, provides the physical protection and also prevents the overexpansion of the heart. Then on the inner side here, we have one more layer of cells. This layer on the inner side of the heart, right? So this, because this is present towards the inner side, that's why we call it endocardium. Endo means inside, cardium means heart, right? And this is basically there so as to make the blood flow smooth. We don't want the blood flow inside the ventricles turbulent. For this we have these squamous cells, squamous endothelial vascular cells, which make the inner wall or the inner surface of the heart smooth, right? This is the endocardium. Now we are left with this middle layer, middle muscular layer. This middle muscular layer is composed of the bands of special type of muscles, right? You see, there is a special type of muscle here. So all of this wall inside is made up of the muscles. Those muscles are the cardiac muscles, right? And now we call this layer as the myocardium. Myo means heart, right? Myo means muscles and cardiac means heart. So this is a muscular layer of the heart. Now this is the muscle basically which provides the contractile function to these muscles or to the heart. So the heart is contracting because of these muscles, right? So this is the major anatomy of the heart. So we have studied that the heart has two sides. This on this side is the left side, and then to this side is the right side, and each side in turn is divided into two compartments. This is the atrium, left atrium, this is the ventricle, left ventricle, and this upper part is the atrium, right atrium, then this is the right ventricle. And then it has valves, this bicuspid valve between the atrium and the ventricle. Here between the right atrium and the right ventricle we have a bicuspid valve, and then two major blood vessels, they emerge out of the ventricle from the left and the right respectively. This is called as the aorta, which emerges out of the left ventricle, and then one which emerges out of the right ventricle, it is the pulmonary artery, right? So these are the major things that you have to learn about the anatomy of the heart. So rest of the things for the heart functioning cardiac cycle we'll study in another lecture. Thank you very much.